And I'm getting a phone call. Sorry. And we are now live. All right.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being with us today for this fourth event dedicated to women in blockchain gaming, NFTs, digital arts, and technology. Today, the topic of today will be the challenges with testing blockchain product and dApps. And we have an amazing roster of speakers on this panel, which we will be introducing in a few minutes. Right before that, I'll start with the usual presentation of what is the Blockchain Game Alliance for those of you who are not yet familiar. So the Blockchain Game Alliance, it's a non-profit organization which is committed to promoting blockchain within the video game industry. We have now over 150 members, and our goal is to spread awareness about all the possibilities offered by blockchain technologies, non-fungible tokens, decentralized gaming, decentralized organization, etc., in to provide new ways, to recommend new ways, to promote new ways of creating, publishing, playing, building stronger communities for developers, for players, for all the actors in the ecosystem. The core activities of the Alliance, so we are here to provide a platform for networking between our members. They can chat, they can connect, they can discuss and collaborate. We also provide research and reporting. We're here for representing the blockchain game companies and give them visibility towards the traditional video game actors, and for advocating for the use of the technology within our industry. I'm very proud to say that we are over 150 members. As you can see on this map, that's a lot of logos. And the great thing is that it's not just gaming companies. It's really a wide range of different type of project. It can be a solution for developers to facilitate them to develop games using blockchain. It can be investors. It can be legal company. It can be media, press, events. A lot of different companies who all together are here and are sharing the same goal to promote adoption of blockchain in the industry. So we're happy. Some of the recent activities we've been running include publishing articles about how different things work, like blockchain collectibles, NFTs, DAOs, providing free speaking opportunities to our members, and all sorts of activities for them to present their project, to connect with users. We've run already, today is the fourth episode in our series of Women of Blockchain Gaming, NFTs, and Digital Art. So we've had a lot of amazing women that are here in this industry and building great products, making the space move forward. We're really excited to give them voice, to allow them to present what they are doing on stage, and to promote inclusivity and diversity within our industry. So we'll keep running those events as long as we find amazing new speakers. Feel free to reach out to us if you have an idea, if you want to present what you're doing, and we'll be happy to provide you a space to speak. Last of all, I would like to give a big thanks to our sponsors, namely AMD, Ubisoft, Matic, MakerDAO, Algorand, and Animoca brands, who are supporting additionally the Blockchain Game Alliance and providing great support. If you want to join us, you can follow on Twitter, Medium, our website, and Telegram. And that's it for me. I will now leave the stage and give voice to Serena.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, for this introduction about the BGA. And for everyone interested, please find out more onto social media about the great work that the BGA is doing. So today, I will introduce you to the challenges regarding testing blockchain products and dApps. I'll give you a quick introduction about the agenda for this panel. So first of all, we will get an introduction from our speakers, who we are and the projects we are currently involved in. Then we will move on to the panel discussion, where we are going to identify what the challenges are within blockchain products and testing for dApps. Then we will have a section where speakers will be talking to each other and also to the public, and we will be discussing our own visions and experience in testing and deployment of smart contracts for Dapps and products, and then we will open up to the floor. So if you do have any question as we go through this talk, please feel free to share them on social media. We are live streaming, and we will pick up any comments towards the end. So as we go through, please share your comments and questions, and we will address them after. So to move on, we're going to be having a quick introduction from our speakers, so we can move on to the next slide. And to start with, I'm just going to pass on the word to Tanya, who's here from CryptoMibs. If you want to give us a quick introduction about yourself and the project that you're currently working on.
Sure, thank you, Serena. Hi, everybody. So I'm Tanya. I'm co-founder of CryptoMibs. We are a gaming platform on Ethereum. It is based on marbles. So we try to live at the intersection of gaming and art. So our marbles, we try to portray them as works of art, and we have opportunities for artists to collaborate on our platform and profit share to encourage the whole collectible side of marbles. And we also have a gaming platform that is arcade style. So they're all mini games based on the marbles and the metadata from our marble token. And and it's also open and set up for being able to collaborate with other developers as well. We also try to really leverage everything that the blockchain has to offer. So we've gone out and done a lot of cross-gaming opportunities, so you can actually bring your assets from other games and make marbles with them. You can design your own marbles. And we've also tried to give people some help with the onboarding and accessibility to crypto. So we have our own in-gaming currency, and people can actually now trade their assets. So if you have thousands of crypto kitties and some of them you can't really use or they're lower value, you can actually trade them on our platform for tickets and then use them to either play games or even to purchase assets from other dApps. So, we're very excited about this space. There's still a lot of work to be done, and we're just excited to be part of this community. So, hi.
Thank you so much for this introduction about CryptoMibs, which is a super exciting platform, and I can't wait to actually carry on playing with it. Thank you so much. And now I'm just going to introduce and pass on the word to Gabrielle, who is here with us today. Hi, Gabrielle. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Gabrielle. I'm the CEO of a company called Knabu. Knabu stands for you back, backwards, UBANK. We're a crypto team. We're particularly solving the fiat to crypto bridge by licensing as a bank here in the UK. The other area of focus that we think is essentially important is transaction security. So as part of our efforts to assist the crypto space, we have partnered with 2 or 3 other companies to provide a keyless wallet solution. That's a product that we call Threshold, and we support any type of in-game asset, any type of ERC20 token, and happy to be here.
Thank you so much for this introduction, and definitely want to learn more about your project. And we've got Olive joining us today. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi,
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm honored. Thanks for having me. That's so exciting to see so many ladies. Well, I've been in blockchain forever. It's love-hate, to be honest. I remember the times of like early 2017, 18. And I've been like, I don't know, it's so funny to see it's actually developing and getting to this stage. So I'm happy to be here still. Well, I'm a visual artist who was an occasional blockchain entrepreneur who's done many things in the space since. Right now, I'm interested in expanding my art practice, and I work a lot with technology and gaming. Blockchain, not as much. I treat it as more of a kind of a back-end technology. But it's always interesting to explore what's going on in the space and etc. So that's why I'm here. So, yeah.
Thank you. I think it's always interesting to have different views on the tech and the products that actually can be applied on such technology. So it will be interesting to have the conversation. And then we welcome Xenia with us today. Hi there, nice to meet you. And thank you so much for taking part in this panel.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. I have a more bird's view of the industry, as I have a podcast with my twin sister that is called Value Tokenized. We cover digital assets and the future of finance, but not only. And over a year and a half that we exist, we interviewed multiple projects in gaming, in collectibles, in art. So I'm happy to share some of the examples of my favorite projects. We also run It Takes Two, which is a PR and content marketing firm, and trying to be active as a public speaker to help with the adoption, because like the inspiration behind our podcast was to bring people together and help expert voices get out there, because I think that education, and this is one of the major components of education in this space, is very important. That's what we need for adoption, one of the things. So happy to be here, happy to participate in this discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Xenia, for mentioning that, as education is definitely one of the greatest points that we will be touching also throughout this series. So I'm just going to start by asking you, what are the challenges in testing blockchain products in Dapps? I know this is quite a general question that will introduce us to this topic and to dive in more further into this. But I think it will be interesting for now to really identify what are the challenges that we've experienced within our own projects from the past, but also from the current projects we're currently working on. And if we could name a few, and then we will dive into the conversation a bit further. But if we can start from Jasper, Tanya, and then we can carry on the conversation, if you can highlight a few of the challenges that you've encountered so far.
Sure. I mean, I think the challenges have been quite a few. I mean, it's a whole different headspace. I mean, my background, I mean, I've been implementing centralized systems for, I hate to say, close to 20 years. So, you know, there are very established ways in which you do that, especially as you test new software. You know, you have your development environments, your testing environments, and then you have your production environments. And usually, you know, the assumption is that as you move from your development environments, for one thing, development, test, and production are usually the same. Like, you can actually just, you know, port your code across, and you can actually say that the systems are the same, which is not something that you can say with blockchain test nets. So your test net and your main net are usually different, because you can't have the same contract in each net. You have to deploy new ones. And then the other challenge is that usually, by the time you get to a production environment, your production environment is usually your fastest, your biggest environment with the most memory, the most resources in a centralized system. But when you're dealing with Ethereum, we very quickly find out that your testnet is actually your slowest. And especially now when you're dealing with these really high gas prices, and there are things that you really can't control. So to me, that has been a really big adjustment. I think the biggest adjustment in testing blockchain dApps, and it's been quite a learning curve for us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So from what you're saying, it feels that comparing centralized to decentralized system, it actually confirms that there's an issue there with timing, for example, that gets highlighted. And how fast it can actually enter into this industry. How did that work out for you, Gabrielle, at Knabu?
Well, I think our challenges have been challenges that are somewhat practical, that are not generic to the blockchain space, and then some that are. So just on a very practical level for us, a big challenge is time zones. We just have to deal with people in different time zones. That's very time consuming. We do wish that there would be more tools for testing. So some of the tools we use are Ganache for Ethereum contracts. We use Hyperledger Composer, Exonom Testkit, Truffle. But, you know, we do wish that there were more tools available. The other challenge that we have at times is that sometimes the demand for products or things that we would like to roll out, uh, we're constrained because there are pieces that are missing. And so a lot of the times it's a very sort of manual, clunky. We have to reach out to foundation to kind of discover it may not be where we think it should be, or sometimes they've exceeded our expectations. It's much further along. It's just not publicly available information. So, there are those nuances. And, the way we look at it is we do feel that this technology has true utility. A lot of our founders have been in the space a very long time. And it's just part of the territory that sometimes, it's just not as smooth as you would like it to be because it's further ahead than a lot of the other spaces. So again, some of the things are very practical. We would like there to be more tools. And I suppose as the space gets even bigger, it would be nice if we could deal with people who are in the same time zone so we could sleep more.
That's for sure something that we should very much address in the future. And I know that Xenia and Olive have been probably looking at this from different perspectives. So I was interested to hear from Olive if you ever encountered any challenges in testing products and dApps within the blockchain space.
Oh yes, absolutely. I've launched my own collection of NFTs back in, actually last year, not so long ago. And I am a technologist in some ways, but I'm not that like blockchain savvy still. And I went through the whole process. Basically, I created artwork. I minted tokens. I put them on chain. I created a website that linked up with OpenSea. So I basically I went full circle. And let me tell you, it was really, really challenging. It took me quite some time to figure it out. It's not as easy as it might seem. So if you're an artist trying to try to do NFTs, good luck. Good luck with that. It's so very challenging. So I feel like that's where a lot of artists are partnering with platforms. Yeah, but I'm very hopeful that it's gonna improve, and developers are taking their time and they're listening to the feedback. So that's amazing. So what else? As of right now, I'm testing the sandbox alpha. I'm creating my own universe within the game. So that's gonna be exciting. It's my first time creating a game. It's really challenging because I have no idea how to do that. It's an alpha stage, but it's really, really interesting, very challenging to figure some aspects out. But I'm quite hopeful. It's as challenging, so it's actually, after working with blockchain products, normal software seems so easy. I think it's a huge plus, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. In a way, it feels like the challenge also comes with
some
excitement in terms of, being one of the first at discovering the space and creating it alongside the actual platform.
Right.
Yeah. How did that work out for you, Xenia? Because I know part of your work is also about the education, which is kind of follows up well from what Olive said, that there are gaps from learning how to use and operate on these tools and actually, going through the right direction, or at least, try and find out as much as possible.
I would say that for me, as a person who was privileged to see a lot of project, like the inside of the project from starting from the early stages, I would say how important it must be for people who are developing it and they get to the point where they have to test it with the crowd, with the actual users. I think that it's crucial, like when you can do it yourself and when you are able to pull more people in to help those who create these applications to help verify their ideas. So I think this like crowd component, even if you're something that you can test like as a real user and provide your feedback, I think it's really valuable. So everyone who has this opportunity to actually go spend their time and test something from the perspective, you don't need to be a developer for that, but actually providing feedback with how something works, because blockchain or no blockchain, this is still like the essence is same, like in this sense at least, because in multiple ways it's very, very different. But yeah, I think this is the point I would like to make here.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, for sure. It is definitely interesting to see how we can have an influence on what it is getting created, as we're living in time where most organizations are actually experimenting. So it totally makes sense for that to coexist. There's also something I wanted to touch on, which is the distributed trust. And I know that Gabrielle wanted to sort of address that point as well. Oh, you just need to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think if we take a step back, for me personally, the reason why the blockchain gaming space is so important is because, you know, the blockchain space itself derived from game theory. And I feel that we are encountering so many issues now in 2020 with, you know, a recessionary climate and a global pandemic, that people forget that games are so important for enjoyment. This is the reason why we play games. We just love to have a good time in a virtual world. Where I'm going with that is that for us, the creative people need to create, and they need to not be burdened with the invisible plumbing that goes behind scaling games. So for us, that specifically means providing solutions, in this case, for example, a keyless wallet or treasury management system, where games can focus on doing just that, keeping their users happy, being creative, but still having a very strong system to manage their in-game assets. So what we've done is we've partnered with 2 other companies to provide what we call an MPC wallet. It's a hybrid of a cold and a hot wallet, which allows different companies to manage all of their crypto in a very seamless way at the back end, but at a fraction of the cost of, let's say, a multi-signature setup. So this diagram is just to show how we try to incorporate what we call a distributed trust model, where we have the game, we have a node which we host, Knabu, and a node hosted by another company, and together we perform a multi-party computation to allow companies to broadcast transactions to the public blockchain, but at the same time, they have a very slick UX to just manage all of their portfolio of assets.
Thank you for sharing this. Yes, absolutely. It makes sense. And I think it gives us a good overview about the project you're working on and how this actually relates to the overall scope of that. If anyone wants to add anything in terms of the distributed trust as a standard, I'm very happy for you to have your say on this point. And as we move forward, there's also a point I wanted to make about the fact that smart contracts, once are deployed, these cannot be altered. And I know this also represents a challenge, and how these has somehow impacted on your organization.
Well, I mean, they cannot be modified, but they can be blacklisted, actually. So that makes me question, like, kind of decentralized nature a little, to be honest. So I know for a fact that the contract can be blacklisted. So if the website, the Dapps decides it's not valid for some reason, or just like doesn't want it there, so it can blacklist it and it disappears pretty much. Facts.
Seni, I see you nodding. What's your thought on that?
No, I would say actually I was thinking about something else, like on a slightly different note. I was thinking that even though, yes, this is possible, like this feature, but once you have something that you can actually use to prove the whole like story, every like stage, every step of the process you went to get where you are now, I think for multiple purposes, it can be really beneficial. So I think it would rather, like, a lot of people wouldn't use like this feature. So actually, yeah, I think it's more like it's more accurate on a higher level. But I think like this provides like an outlook into the history. So there's nothing when you can't fake unless you choose to hide something specifically. But when you actually want to prove the work that has been done there, I think this is actually, yeah, this is very helpful. whether you want this like later for talking to investors, or yeah, just showing your traction. So I think it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And Tanya, what do you think this could represent for your organization?
Well, I mean, we've had the fact that you can't really change a contract once you've deployed it. I mean, that's also something that's very unique to the blockchain space, and it requires a paradigm shift in thinking about software development. So for us, I mean, our approach to tackle this is really, we do a lot of very small deployments to the blockchain. So we really split up our functionality into smaller contracts that and we actually test them extensively before we launch them on a test net. But it is nerve-wracking. I mean, we've had actually an example. For example, when we first launched our initial game called Skydrop, which is it's a version of Plinko, and in the original game, a player, if they land in a certain bucket, you can win multiple marbles. You get a bigger, you can win you could win 3 to 5 marbles. So getting those marbles one at a time to the user was a challenge that it wasn't easy to do, because at the time, ERC 1155 didn't exist, so you couldn't do a bulk transfer to a user. So we had to devise a way that we could keep track of who had won that bucket and how many marbles had actually been sent to the user. And we actually ran, we missed, some of the testing. We didn't capture a scenario where you could actually get into an infinite loop. So essentially, you could have a user that could they could be granted 20 or 30 marbles, even though they were only supposed to get 5. And actually, that did happen. It did happen in our live environment. And it's not a big deal. These are games after all. They're just marbles. It's part of doing business. But we had to take that contract down, and we had to deploy a new one with a fix in order to fix that issue. But that's why we have our main marble contract, and then we attach for each game or for other things, they're separate contracts, so that if we run into a problem that we miss and that we can't recover from, there's a way for us to redeploy and not affect our user base.
I see. There's a couple of interesting elements that actually came up from these conversations. One is, how do you best communicate these to the users in terms of smart contracts, how this works? And we say it's immutable knowledge, that once it's there, but actually it can be altered in a way. So in terms of communication, I think this is possibly a good one for Xenia, and to see how these can be best addressed and communicated. And I'm also interested, in terms of connecting with artists, and how, for example, a game such as CryptoMibs, for example, could represent a challenge, but also something very interesting and playful for artists to understand and to get a sense of what the platform can provide and what is your input and influence, and how these two elements can move forward. So I would like to pass on the word to Xenia in terms of the education and communication around the smart contracts, and then to Olive and Knabu also talking about the communities and how these can be implemented.
Definitely. I think that this question specifically, people play games. We play games rather because we like the game and not because of what's behind it. So I think maybe this aspect is one thing that it's a choice for the end user, for the player, whether they want to know more about how it works, how things that they love, like their favorite game, like how does it work. So I believe here there should be an option, like there should be a choice for these people to go somewhere, maybe to connect with the team, maybe to go to some public resource where they can actually go and understand, where it is explained to them fully the system, how it works. But if they choose not to go deep into the details, it should also be a chance for them to play, to be included without going too deep into the technical details. So I think there's like, that's why you should really pay attention to being able to explain how it works, like the backend, like the what's going on behind the scenes. But it should not be an absolute requirement for people to actually be able to use the product or to play the game. I think this is really important here.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like workshops or, as you described, that behind the scenes tutorials could really help understanding what's running behind a product. But at the same time, it could also represent quite a task to sit and understand really what's happening, whether, for example, artists or users, and I'm addressing this to Olive, for example, these should represent a platform or place where they can come in and freely just create and experiment within that platform, having an awareness and an understanding about it, but also have that freedom. And then I would like to relate that to communities and how that, for example, for Gabrielle, that challenge can be addressed. But for you, Olive, what do you think, how much would you think you would need to know for you to remain creative within a platform such as CryptoMibs, for example, or other gaming platforms like Sandbox?
I feel like a lot, actually. I would love to say, oh, nothing much, just come in and do whatever. But I mean, you have to understand what blockchain is to begin with, and why bother. I mean, you have to know why bother, and most of the art world still doesn't know why. Why bother? So that's some major issues. I mean, if you know the answer to that question, why bother doing something with blockchain? Everything else will be much easier. But if you don't have that basic understanding, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can learn how to use software. It's super annoying, but yeah, doable. But yeah, if there is no value, what's the point? I mean, I'm still kind of biased on that. I think there is an immense value in terms of NFTs for digital art, but that's where it ends. For gaming, of course, I mean, I had like multiple pitch decks on that. How owning your gaming assets can revolutionize, whatever, make billions and trillions of dollars. But that's a topic for another discussion.
And yes, I'm interested to know how, what that means for companies like Knabu, for example, that addresses more on a community level.
I think there are different tiers and dimensions to this. I mean, and I'm very interested to know. I appreciate what Olive is saying because I think it really comes down to the motivation of the gamer. So I play some games, not a lot, because if I do, I'll get addicted and I wouldn't do any work. Because I have a legal background, my thing is I like to look at the terms and conditions of the game. People think this is boring. For me, this is very sexy. I like doing it. I read the terms. I'm happy. I play the game. For other people, especially in the blockchain gaming space, I think what has not been explored, at least to my knowledge, is the extent to which a blockchain game mechanism changes the dynamic and the ecosystem between the gamers and developers. Because I think how we look at it is you now have a new type of model where gamers can be more involved, they could get more embedded into the dynamics of earning reputation and enjoying the game, and they could host news, they could maintain the balance of the game, they could help attract new users, they could, for example, vote on the game mechanisms and the operation strategy. So I think how I see it now is we're at a place in 2020 where the full potential of blockchain games has not been realized. That's the opportunity. And we're at a point where you have this great technology that could really improve the user experience in a very tangible way. And I think there needs to be more focus on that. Specifically for my company, unfortunately, we don't focus on the lovely UX part. We're just pure functional on the back end, helping gaming companies to manage it in very seamlessly so they could focus on these things. making the user experience much better, focusing on the challenges of smart contracts, and they just don't have to spend a lot of time managing the in-game assets or that type of flow. So I think if we look at it in different dimensions, for us, the bottom line is you do need to have a very functional, slick in-game asset management system. And at the same time, there's such a big opportunity that we, as part of the blockchain Cuban space, need to pay more attention to, I believe, in terms of changing the dynamic of games, where we shifted 10 years ago from a very closed loop proprietary model to now this great, lovely open source model where we could focus more on real gamer motivations. And I think that's where the exciting part really lies.
Absolutely. I think that's what it's going to make a huge difference going forward, and how we can really engage with communities and really make the use of blockchain technology a wider experiment on a global scale. That's something also that we've highlighted at the very start of this panel regarding the timing and the latency. So the next question is about what are the challenges introduced by transaction latency on blockchain mainnets in timing something that can be emulated in a centralized system, but not so much on a public blockchain. So this is, of course, one of the challenges that it is somehow present in centralized and decentralized chains. And I was interested to address this also to Jasper, Tanya, CryptoMibs, because I think we've discussed this in the past, and it feels that these could represent something that a company, an organization could benefit from in terms of how fast it is to be testing those products in Dapps, and what are the challenges and how we can best address them.
Yeah, I mean, there's the latency issues with especially the public blockchains. Are things that, again, it's a bit of a paradigm shift from when you're testing centralized systems, and we've had to make that adjustment as well. And it's and I think this is something where trying to link in from the previous discussion that while yes, I think we need to be less technical on how we talk about crypto games, the blockchain industry in general, because I think the general mainstream public just doesn't understand. They don't want to know that level of detail, and it just scares them from jumping into the space. But at the same time, it is different. I actually, just before this call, right, we have on our platform where you can trade. You can use your tickets to buy. To buy assets from other Dapps. So this particular person had purchased actually an Axie Infinity, an Axie from our platform, and they were charged the tickets, but they were still waiting to get the asset. And and for if you were doing that and paying buying something with your credit card online, it would and it was something digital, you would get it right away. But in this case, now gas prices being what they are, the transaction is just taking a really long time to execute. So, I explained to the user what was going on, and this user was savvy enough to say, oh yes, gas prices are a real pain right now, and they get it. But if I try to explain that to my grandmother, if my grandmother was trying to buy an asset, it would be, what on earth, right? So I think that there has to be a level of, we have to give the user some level of education. They have to understand a little bit as to how this is different and how it benefits them. But we just haven't found the right language to do that, to explain things like latency and how things take so long. And from a testing point of view, testing the application, I mean, we essentially have to emulate as part of our tests. Okay, so, one of the use cases is, the transaction goes right away. Another use case is, it takes 20 minutes, but another use case is that it may take 4 days for a transaction to go through. And what tools and what backend functions do you implement to keep, searching for these transactions? I mean, we have a list, what we call a listener function, in our node code, to try to keep searching for transactions that may have been dropped or are still pending on the blockchain. And I think many of the dApps are having to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you just shared with us is hugely important, because given the gas price and what you said about making these in the best language as possible, I think it's also a challenge that Xenia's company, for example, is addressing as well. How do we communicate with to customers, for example, and to our platform users that given this time that is taken by the platform and the public blockchain, we might need to wait several days before a transaction actually occurs? And is it just like, actually, this is a question for you, Tanya. Do you think this is just a communication issue? Because then I want to be touching on what kind of tools do we use to be testing those apps, those dApps. But in the same manner, how do we best communicate these if we want to have a successful project? How do we address those issues, and how do we communicate that to the users and invite them to join?
I would say that for someone who's familiar with Bitcoin and uses it to as a store of value and on daily basis, I think this weight, it's not something completely unfamiliar. But when we talk about this being part of the process in the game, the same wait time, I would say that this is essential. Of course, you should guide the user through the entire process, saying that, explaining you constantly, completely on every step, that this is a possibility and why the wait happens that. And support should also be available for people to ask questions, because there are impatient people who would want to know more on why this is happening. Maybe they did something wrong, etc. So one, instructions. Secondly, support that's available for people in real time to be able to ask the questions when they get anxious or impatient about that. But I would also say that maybe when it comes to games, it's really important. Maybe there is a way for people to keep playing, or maybe to start doing something, or maybe have access to at least limited functionality or something that they can do while we are still waiting for this transaction to be approved. So because once, for example, okay, you have to wait, and before you can actually do this, and this, if you give people access to at least some features that they could do to enjoy, or just to to enjoy while they're waiting, I think this is also very important. So these three things.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely something we should be all mindful about going forward, and the way the whole industry, blockchain and gaming space is progressing on this. Something I've described earlier is the gaps between test nets and main nets, and how that impact to the development cycle. So I wanted to sort of address this question to Gabrielle in terms of, how did you find that within your project, testing between test nets and main nets, and the availability of reliable testing tools, and which tools have you been adopting, and what kind of solution towards the smart contracts and the testing of blockchain dApps and products?
I mean, not to sound glib, but we just deal with the delay between testnet and mainnet the best we can. We can't do anything better. The tools that we use are some of the tools I mentioned before. We use Ganache for Ethereum contracts. We use Hyperledger Composer, Exonom Testkit, Truffle, again for ETH. We also use Bitcoin J for BTC. Sometimes when we have had issues, we've gone directly to the foundations and asked them what they suggest, to be quite frank, if we're not really sure what to do there. So I think that's basically how we've approached it. Again, for me, we're just at such a pivotal time where the true utility of blockchains in gaming, as far as we're concerned, is interoperability in games and gaming profiles. And it comes with a territory where you are cutting edge as a space, all of the pieces of the puzzle are just not there. So, we use the tools that are available, and if it were left up to us, we would like to see more tools to just make it a little bit easier for us to roll out products.
It's totally a good point that it's very much missing. It is still quite a bit sketchy where to find information and how trustworthy this can be. Actually, something I wanted to mention going forward is the challenges in testing multiple wallets. So I know that Jasper, Tanya has made a very great point saying that, for example, MetaMask updates are communicated primarily through Twitter, which it may not be the best place for updates of this kind to be found. So, how do you sort of deal with that? And I'm also interested, to hear from Olive from an artist background. When something like that, in terms of wallets and applications, comes out, where would you go and find and source best knowledge around that? Is Twitter really the best place to go?
Yes, I mean, it is the only place to go in terms of that. Or I don't know, some magazine other reads, like Cointelegraph, for instance. I don't know who is Cointelegraph. I don't know. Or a forum that you've never heard of, or Discord channel of that wallet. That's a great sources, but I think Twitter is the best. But God forbid if you have a problem with that wallet, you're not getting your assets back. I mean, I lost a ton of assets on Engine Wallet, and this is pretty much it. I mean, they were never found. Support was never supportive, but yeah, actually, but I had a great experience with this Trust Wallet, to be honest. I mean, they really don't have outreach channels as far as I know. Literally, CEO's Twitter, he responds right away. That's the communication channel. Which is kind of okay, but going mainstream, it should not be that way. I think there should be ways to contact and resolve problems right away. It's an area to improve.
Mm-hmm. I saw Tanya smiling, and I'm sure she may want to add something to this point.
Yeah, no, I definitely think this is an area where the blockchain space needs huge improvements. I get that, it's a young space, it's open source, everybody's kind of doing all kinds of stuff. But if we actually want to gain, if we actually want to put the blockchain in the background and just showcase the products that we're making and not have the users having to worry so much about what's going on, under the hood, so to speak, there has to be much better ways. We have to get more disciplined, essentially, on how we manage, the chains, how we communicate changes to people, because all kinds of people may be using, APIs and, that somebody's using. I mean, I'm going to pick a little bit on OpenSea, for example, but we use their API a lot in our application because we use various Dapps in our platform. So we rely on their API for, to show that information on the front end. There was, something happened, all of a sudden, images weren't coming through, it was broken. Essentially our app was greatly affected because you couldn't see anything. So luckily the guys at OpenSea are amazing, right? We did contact them through Discord, and they answered right away. And yeah, they had made a change to their API that they didn't think would affect anybody, and they didn't tell anybody, and they just did it. Those things should, are big no-nos in traditional software development cycles. They should notify people that there should be a communication group. You should be able to sign up to a updates newsletter or something. Where you're actually notified that a change is coming, when it's going to happen, so that you can actually prepare and plan for it. I mean, MetaMask is, I'm not happy that their main way to communicate is via Twitter, because I don't have time to sit and keep looking at Twitter or, waiting for notifications. There should be a different, more reliable way. Where you can actually get these notifications. And even now, I signed up to test their version 8, for example. So, I got the link, but, no documentation, right? So I've asked them, it's like, okay, can you point me to where I can find documentation, what's changing, so that we can actually test it? So I'm just waiting for a reply, and I'm sure they will, and they will provide that stuff. But it needs to be a much more fine-oiled machine for this to actually work in a much better way and allow us to be more effective and not so reactive, right, all the time.
That's for sure, and I think this is a great one for Xenia to be working on, as we mentioned about communication and the fact that that represents one of the biggest challenges that we've been talking about today. I think you're on mute, just
sorry about that. Yeah, I believe that this is really interesting, and I'm really passionate to see how this area will develop going forward, so like closer to the end of this year and the course of next couple of years, because as we get more advanced in terms of communication and the users get more advanced in understanding, I think some of the middle steps we have to do in the middle now to actually bridge this gap, they won't be needed anymore at some point in the future. So yeah, it will be interesting. I think we will see some new communications model, like between like the the creators and the end users. So we'll see. I'm really curious about other experts, like other panelists take on this, like what will happen next, not only in terms of this external part of the communication, but what happens in the course of this year or the next couple of years in this space.
Totally, yes. We, as we are approaching the end of this talk, I just want to address a number of questions that we received from the people watching us. And also, I would like for you to start thinking about something that you'd like to share with the audience and everyone that's been following this panel in terms of what we think, the challenges are and how we can share the best practice or the best advice we have for other organizations and individuals in this space. Couple of questions before we go. Here we've got Dino asking, have you found the testing tools useful versus doing it manually? Which I think it's a good question to be asked in this context. Do you find that testing tools can be useful, or is it best to test in a manual way and then deploy into the public chain? I think maybe Gabrielle or Tanya can address this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we prefer tools. We prefer not to do it manually. It takes up a lot of time. We're a very sort of small, lean team. Don't have a lot of time, so tools all day.
Cool.
Yeah, from our end, it's actually been a different approach, because we looked at some of the tools, but we weren't sure about how they were working correctly. So spending time looking at the tool, whether it's actually testing correctly and then applying it. We've actually for now been really focusing on manually testing stuff. But now we are at the stage now, and actually I just hired a couple of people to help with automation of tests. We're now at a good place where we can start looking at tools, and we have a bit. We have confidence on what we need to do from our side and what's important from a testing perspective, that we can start automating some of the stuff.
Here we go. All right. And so as we're moving towards the conclusion of this panel, I want to ask you all, how do you envision the future? What would you like to see in terms of how do we think we could best overcome these challenges? And by doing so, I just want to get up on the screen a couple of slides that Olive shared with us today about the creative projects that she's been putting together. And yes, if you can start thinking about, we've been discussing the problems, the issues, the challenges that we've encountered, but what is that we hope for the future? How would we like to see, in a way to overcome these challenges? And we can, of course, be creative on this, but what are the hopes for the future? We can start from Xenia this time and passing on to Olive after. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I started mentioning this in the previous point that I made, that for me personally, as this is closer to my area of expertise, it will be interesting to see how, as the audience advances and technology moves forward. And actually, I think that one important point that we haven't touched upon is actually regulations, because gaming is a quite regulated space, blockchain or not, and it's becoming more regulated. And as regulations come in place for a lot of fields, not blockchain related, of course, starting from finance in the first place, but actually moving to other areas of life, because for collecting art, this is also it will be getting more precise, and gaming is also super relevant. But I think this is actually a good thing for this industry, because the more regulatory clarity we have, the easier it is for all the participants to actually understand and feel free to create more without being afraid of maybe violating some laws, and actually being afraid to do something of some consequences that might come later. So I think that, yes, regulations is definitely one thing to look forward to in this space, because it will actually bring us to the next level. And yeah, and just like I mentioned, as users become more advanced in terms of what this technology is and how it can be used, we will see that the communication process, it will be happening a lot faster. And then we will also be seeing from this multiple factors together, you'll actually see wider adoption of the technology and the applications that are built on it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely feels like regulations are somewhat still very much important for us. Since we function within society, we do live and live together by regulations. So how does that influence your projects? And I just want to also, you mentioned regulation, and there's some artworks that I see here from Olive and this slide and the previous one, which touches on recent facts that happened. And I think it would make sense in a way to also address that, and to see how regulations and the way we envision the future of technology within society, and how we can best represent that within crypto games.
Well, I guess it's a question to me, right? What the future holds, what I'm hopeful for. Well, I'm hopeful I hope that the world's not going to end this summer. Seriously, it's been quite brutal lately. You never know. That's the first thing. In terms of blockchain, NFT space, I can only say stuff for myself. What I'm personally hoping for. I've been in the space forever, with mixed results. I guess I'm interested in exploring new technologies. That's my drive. Like, what's new, what's interesting. Evolve as an artist. Evolve my practice. That was the initial reason I got in the space. Went sideways from that, but this is the sandbox art stuff I created using Box Edit and the sandbox game. I felt like a metaverse should be a space for many voices, and what's going on. It's just important stuff. The Black Lives Matter movement, I felt like it should find its representation in the metaverse, because it matters. It matters in real life, and it should matter. It matters to me. It should matter in that space. So I got a lot of haters on Twitter saying that, hey, it should be for entertainment. We don't want to see the political art. Just get off. But I feel like it's important. It is important. So, and yeah, so basically it's. Basically, I'm hoping to become a famous artist. Thanks for listening. Buy my art. Okay.
Thank you. I I would pass on now the word to Tanya and Gabrielle, asking you what's your vision on the future and how would you like to overcome those challenges that we've been talking about the past hour. Gabrielle.
I think for me, personally, what I would like to see is more interoperability. That to me is the core of blockchain technology, having in-game assets being traded between games. I think what all of us seeing is that there should be more metaverses. That's definitely something I think is more exciting. For me, what that breaks down to is game developers and designers and other companies involved in the value chain focusing on the user game experience. That's what it's all about. That's why we play games. And it also means having invisible machinery, I think further to Tanya's point, where the user doesn't need to know about it. They just need to play a great game. So what I would like to see more is more standardized tools, better way of communication within the space. I personally don't want to see heavy-handed regulation. I think the regulation needs to be balanced with, again, innovation and producing new models. And for us, some people ask us why are we involved because we're licensing as a bank. It's because we understand where the crypto space came from. It's all about interoperability, whether it's in-game assets or real-world assets. And so our contribution to that is, as I mentioned before, to produce a keyless wallet solution with our partners where games could just have that invisible machinery. They don't have to worry about it. We actually have decided to introduce a special program for any type of gaming company, a video game company. And you could find out about it by just actually pinging me or on a website called Threshold, THRESHO. That's a 0LD. And we basically doing a subsidy there for any type of games company that needs a wallet solution that's secure and they maybe cannot access the more expensive multi-sig setups. So again, for us, the point is that for us to operate at scale, we need more standardization, which means more tools, which attracts more money. But at the core of it, it should be the gamer user experience and just making that exceptionally good.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. I think you've sort of described the full cycle of what is needed within this industry. And if you don't mind to share the address that you mentioned just now within the Twitter following this video, that'll be extremely useful for everyone that's been watching this panel. Thank you, Gabrielle. And Tanya, to conclude, what are your thoughts in the vision that you'd like to share with us for the future?
Well, I mean, for the future, I think we all somewhat share the vision, right? That, we really want this to be, about giving the regular person, ability to participate and earn from their contributions, either for anything that is being done in the blockchain. It can be a video game, it can be, a retail platform, whatever it may be, but essentially not the world be made of these, ultra large, companies like Amazon, where you have a few people making $1 bazillion and everybody else, living on very little money. So if you can profit share, you can redistribute income as a result of, of these solutions that we're creating. That's really what, my vision is, for CryptoMibs alone, right? Like I would like to see, artists being the ones that are, putting, all the designs and the marbles come from independent artists. They profit share from, we profit share when the marbles sell. We can incorporate them into games. We would like to have developers come in and create their own games and also profit from people using their games. There's so many opportunities there. But I agree with what Gabrielle said, right, that we need a lot more interoperability, right? And for that, we absolutely need standards. So like an ERC 721 token should be the same everywhere. And if you start digging into the various forms of ERC 721's tokens, they're not all made equal, right? Not everybody has metadata on chain, especially for artists, right? Artists, most of the art that's out there, that even when you're minting your art, most of the art is actually being held in a centralized database. So those are the things that, we still need to address, and we still need to figure out as things evolve. But we have to get to the point where an ERC 721 is the same all across, or whatever new standards come up, so that then at that point we can actually put the technology in the background, because that's now a given, right? That's a constant, and we can focus on evolving and bringing more people on board. So that's really what I'm hoping, from here. I mean, I have about 10 years worth of projects in my head that I would like to tackle, some in gaming and some not in gaming, with using NFTs, with using all kinds of stuff. So I sure hope that this will continue and I do believe it's here to stay, right? So it's a very exciting time, and we just have to embrace all of this and just tackle the problems as they come up and keep working together. Bring in, the more diverse we are, the better it's going to be. And I think it's very exciting. So I'm very excited to be part of this space.
I really want to thank everyone for sharing that vision and tell us more about the project. It's been an incredible pleasure to be here with you today and to learn from you, your expertise, and what do you see happening in the real future. Thanks once again for participating. And what I want to say is that we definitely highlight the crucial points which we wanted to address within this conversation, and definitely regulations, interoperability, sharing with the users, and communication in the best possible ways, and the future of NFTs, crypto games, and artists getting involved within these platforms are definitely topics that in a year's time, I'm sure there will be a huge development in these areas. So I'll be very happy to carry on this conversation with you, and I will tell everyone to keep joining the BGA and learn more from this panel, and stay tuned in for the upcoming talks. We have one actually happening next week, which is going to be around collectibles within the crypto games. So stay tuned as we invite artists from the NFTs and crypto games to join us. And that will be next week, same day at the same time. And once again, I thank you all for being here with me today. And thanks, Sebastian, for putting this together. And thanks to all the sponsors and partners within the BGA.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful day.
Take care. Bye now.